I think Argonians are one of, if not the most interesting race of people across Tamriel. I'm sure I've already offended all the lizard owners out there, but the mystique of this alien reptilian race has always intrigued me. If I have a question about the Dark Elves, Ultima, or Nords, I can look it up. The same can't really be said about the Argonians. Part of that, of course, is because of their culture, how they perceive time and history. I probably get a comment every couple of days asking me to play more of the Elder Scrolls Online, and honestly, after beating the Morrowind DLC and some of the recent controversies, I didn't really see a reason to return right now. But one comment I kept seeing above all others is that as an Argonian main, it would be a mistake not to try Murkmire, a completely standalone story in the region of Black Marsh never touched by another Elder Scrolls game. I know you can go there in Arena, okay, but this doesn't really count to me. I decided to give the Murkmire questline a solid try, and god damn, you guys were 100% right. Let's start with some very basic lore on the Argonian race and the region of Black Marsh. First off, Argonians call this region the Everything Egg. It's the elves that named it Black Marsh. A frighteningly close analogy is the relationship the Inuit people here in Canada have with their homeland. Nunavut, one of the several territories of Canada, literally translates to our land, which is quite ironic as the capital actually controls it. A disturbingly close analogy to the relationship the Argonians have with their land and nearby colonial powers. In the time of the Elder Scrolls Online, which takes place roughly 700 years before most of the other games, Argonia has opened its gates to the citizens of Tamriel after joining the Ebonheart Pact. What was normally an inhospitable, untraversable swamp now has the infrastructure to support the Dryskins, which is what the Argonians call non-lizards. As a result, tourism has boomed. You'll find tour guides, attractions, and archaeological expeditions carried out by the reigning imperial powers. Fortunately, different to real life, the Argonians don't have a problem with people coming in and scooping up their artifacts. They have an extremely unique culture where they don't preserve or care about their history. Their purpose isn't from their past, but from the now and their connection to the Hist. Speaking of, one of the most important pieces of the Argonian identity is the Hist. The Hist are ancient, sentient trees native to Black Marsh, believed to be remnants of Nirn's earliest life forms with a collective consciousness that transcends time. They share a symbiotic relationship with the Argonians, shaping their biology and guiding their culture through spiritual communion. The Argonians see themselves as extensions of the Hist, living according to its will and returning to it in death. Okay, that was a very quick lesson on the Argonians and their culture. It gets way more in-depth and crazy, I promise you, but that's the basic background info you need to know for this specific questline. If you're wondering why I'm half naked during most of this story, let me explain myself. I promise I'm not into ERP. I think ESO is stupid easy. It's my biggest complaint of the game. I have a bunch of self-imposed restrictions I follow to make the game harder. These can be found in the description as well, but perhaps the biggest challenge I start with is no gear or money. I find this helps me get more immersed and treat each new area like a standalone experience. A fresh canvas, a new area, a new story. It's just how I like to play. So, with only my undergarments to my name, I go on a bit of a borrowing spree and yoink some gear from the local vendors. Yup. Uh-oh. Okay, we got some basic loot. Had to steal from a dark elf, so no hard feelings there. I also decided to do a little fishing. And by a little, I mean 3 hours. Not only is this a great way to make some excellent starting cash, but also grab the first mandatory achievement on the 100% challenge. This is another rule I have in place to ensure I've experienced all the content possible, every side quest, every secret location. I want to see everything this area has before I make any judgments. The Black Marsh took me 19.7 hours to 100%, and hopefully I can summarize the entire thing for you in 30 minutes or less. But with that being said, let's get started with the main attraction, the 7-hour-long questline. Our story begins with our introduction to Cyrodiilic Collections, a group of historians sponsoring expeditions into ancient Argonian temples. Their motivations aren't for profit, or so we're told, but to preserve the Argonian history that the lizards refuse to do themselves. We join up with a band of adventurers and make our way to the temple. Our objective is the Kajinjat crystal, which is a Vaka stone imbued with magicka from thousands of years ago. This will be important later. After we've extracted this magical crystal, we've gained the trust of the Cyrodiilic Collections lady Famia, who reluctantly tells us of the real reason why her organization is here. They're after something called the Remnant of Argon. All we know at this point is the legendary artifact is one of the only pieces of history the Argonians actually remember, weaving tales of it into songs and stories, where a hero locates the remnant and either ushers in a new golden age, or turns the Black Marsh into a barren wasteland for 100 years. But whenever Famia sends someone to look into this mysterious artifact, they end up dead or missing. We find some evidence indicating a group called the Blackguards are going to do the same thing to Famia. This group of mercenaries torture, capture, and kill anyone who knows anything about the Remnant of Argon. It's at this point we're introduced with the benefactor of Cyrodiilic Collections, Cassandra, an Argonian. This immediately is odd, an Argonian sponsoring the recovery of Argonian relics, but not impossible. Severed Argonians are definitely a thing, and after speaking with her a bit more, she does reveal this information to us. Her ancestors grew up as slaves to the Dark Elves, and their connection to the Hist was severed over hundreds of years. Thus, she does not hear the Hist or feel any connection to it, something she deeply wishes to revert. At this point in time, we have no leads on where to locate the Remnant and team up with two separate lizards, Zucus, an Argonian, and Jaksik, a Naga. Zucus' tribe of the Brightthroats is unique because they communicate with their history through chimes. Each chime is different and used to channel a different conversation with the Hist. The chime we need to remember the Remnant of Argon is located deep in a nearby crypt. Upon recovery, Zucus is able to hear the whispers of the Hist and give us a first clue. The other lizard, Jaksik, wants help restoring her town's cemetery, as the Blackguards are removing the gravestakes. Because Argonians are always connected to the Hist, even in death, their funeral service is a little different. They inscribe the heroic feats and accomplishments of the deceased in wood, then stab it through their corpse to prevent them from reawakening. The Blackguards remove these stakes and cause these dead-not-dead Argonians to ravage the countryside. After helping Jaksik calm the graveyard, she inspects one of the stakes removed from a previous warlord. It too had a clue inscribed on it, and with the other clue from Zucus' village, you're able to piece together where to go next. The Swallowed Grove. At the end of this underground grove, you find a pedestal, which combined with hallucinatory drugs allows you to go back in time and inhabit another Argonian's memories. This Argonian's name is Matim, and through various visions you discover this tribe thousands of years ago were under an alien invasion, wielding magic far beyond the Argonians' capabilities. Well, almost. This invasion left the tribe of Argonians desperate, and they called upon their Hist to infuse the entire clan's souls into an orb of amber, which we now know as the Remnant of Argon. For hundreds of years, this tribe of Argonians hid in this artifact, and for hundreds of years the aliens searched, even establishing a forgotten city deep below the surface of the Black Marsh. During the hallucination, the sap speaker of this clan gives us her staff to locate the remnant in the future. But as we're regaining consciousness, we can hear a scuffle. Cassandra has betrayed our group and stolen the staff. She was the one to hire the Blackguards, and is therefore responsible for the murder of hundreds of other Argonians.
Please know I hold you in the highest respect.
I knew something was up with that lizard. From the start.
We chase Cassandra to the village we saw in our hallucination, completely in ruins. Jaksik is certain the remnant is deep below the local history, which is barely clinging to life. It appears to have been diverting all of its energy to preserving the remnant for probably close to 1,000 years. We follow Cassandra underground and discover some alien ruins. You see, the Remnant of Argon posed a problem for the aliens. They believed the Argonians to be primitive, well below their standards, yet they possessed a piece of magicka the aliens themselves did not understand. This led to an obsession and the creation of the Nexus, a pinnacle of alien sorcery, a sub-realm filled with portals completely powered by Welkin stones devoted to finding that artifact. Alas, the aliens were unsuccessful, unable to locate the remnant before the collapse of their empire in the First Era. Luckily for us, alien engineering tends to last a while, and we're able to use a gate with a Vaka stone to locate the chamber of the remnant. Remember, I told you those stones would be important. Unfortunately, it doesn't matter. We're too late. Cassandra makes it to the remnant before us and touches the Remnant of Argon, absorbing its power. Now, in this fight, not only is Cassandra fighting against you, but also the Hist. She exclaims that the Hist is trying to consume her in the first boss phase. After eventually defeating her, Famia takes the Argon and brings it to the surface with you. With the Remnant safely secure, Famia tells us the Hist wants Zukis, Jaxic, and yourself to enter and communicate with the Lost Tribe. The inside of the Remnant is basically an Argonian paradise, but the spirits have been stagnant for far too long. The Sap Speaker tasks you with picking one of your friends to sacrifice, not only to restore the history, but also the tribe of the Argonians inside. A final ceremony is performed with your chosen sacrifice, and a new clan of Argonians is born in the footsteps of the long-lost ancient tribe. That is the summary of the 7-hour-long questline of Murkmire, and that's just the main quest. There are several side quests that even rival this one in terms of intrigue, but we'll get to those in a bit. I'm obviously biased, right? If you know who I am, if you've seen my thumbnails, if you've seen my other videos, you know I like the lizards. This is the best Argonian quest I've ever done in any Elder Scrolls game, bar none. And it's probably flat out one of the better quests I've played overall. They're such an underrated race of people, cursed with only being side content in the main titles. If you read through the Argonian account, that's pretty interesting stuff, but they're just books. As an Argonian main, this was nice. A strong, dedicated story just for the Argonians. A little Iliad seasoning to spice up the story doesn't hurt anyone either. This was just awesome. Now that doesn't mean I have no critiques. I felt Cassandra's motivations ill-explained. In this story, we're given two possibilities by NPCs on what her motivations might be. Either she's trying to control all those poor Argonian souls trapped in the Remnant, or she's trying to regain her connection with the Hist. We see in the finale, it basically requires someone to sacrifice themselves in order to nurture the souls of the Argonians back to life. Cassandra says in the final fight, the Hist power is mine to command, so maybe it is a struggle for power. But she's obviously incredibly wealthy and literally has an army serving her already, so I'm not quite sure what her objectives were. She's old and not particularly powerful or gifted in magic. I know the history is weak in this situation, but I feel like she would have been consumed one way or another. I don't know. You guys can let me know in the comments if you have an opinion or answer to that. She wasn't a great villain in my opinion, so I can't give this story a 10 out of 10 without being disingenuous. As far as any other critiques I have of the main story, they're just problems I have with the Elder Scrolls Online as a whole. Boss encounters being too easy, choices can just be nothing burgers and give the illusion of a major decision, when in fact they change almost nothing. The main quest rewards for most of this story are garbage. You get a helmet for the first mission, then they give you another crate with another random helmet in the next mission. Why is it giving me another helmet? The last quest reward was a helmet. The one thing this helmet crate gave me is the identical helmet that I already have. What an amazing reward. Thank you, Elder Scrolls Online. Spruce it up, man. Give me some cool gear. Why am I gambling with loot boxes? Loot boxes are a common reward throughout this story, which is very odd. I hate that. It's so gross. This is the first time I've encountered this in ESO, and I pray to God it's the last. The finale reward is pretty cool though, I will admit. It's the Sap Speaker's staff with the Kajinjat crystal inlaid in the top. You ESO players can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's a completely unique style of staff they made just for this reward. And if so, that's pretty cool. I also don't like how ESO doesn't instance the main story missions. I had to log out a few times just because there were too many people running around and it wouldn't look good for footage. If you've never played the Elder Scrolls Online before, questing is divided up into 3 separate categories: the main campaign, point of interest missions, and side quests. Technically, there's dailies, I guess, but we're not going to get into that. POIs are the only type of mission not specifically implemented in single-player games. Your run-of-the-mill side quest in the Elder Scrolls Online will probably take you 15 to 20 minutes, but point of interest missions can take anywhere from 30 minutes to 3 hours. Keep in mind, there's like 6 or 7 hours of side questing as well, so we're going to skip over a lot of stuff. Starting out with a bit of a disappointment, the Deadwater Village point of interest. This is the first time in any Elder Scrolls game that we get to interact with the Naga. Every game's got Argonians, right? They're not really that special to see, but the Naga are incredibly fresh and have so much potential for additional world building. In my opinion, that opportunity was kind of squandered in this POI. It's just a general tribal conflict with the new leader and old leader, and you have to help prove the leader's son as a formidable warrior. There's a little bit of insight in the difference between the Naga and Argonian culture, but I think it should have been way deeper and more about the Hist. The Naga and Argonians are cousins. Related, yes, but very different. The Hist do that by design. The Deadwater Village history has blue flowers compared to the standard Argonian red. Why is that? Is it a different species of history? Are they not connected with the others? I would rather have learned about the color of the trees than the quest they actually give you, but again, I'm biased. It's not a horrible quest at all, but the potential was there for it to really be something special. Speaking of something special, a basic side quest called the Skin Taker was pretty disturbing. This is a 20-minute questline where you investigate a string of brutal killings around Black Marsh. Somebody has been torturing Argonians for days, flaying off their skin to eventually crucify them while they barely cling to life. It's a pretty good side quest, and when you eventually find the torture chamber, you discover it's the daughter of this lady, who I chose to execute in cold blood. Now, originally, I was really excited that this was an exclusive mini-quest I got, but no. Now that I'm editing the video, I did some digging, and it turns out the quest is almost identical no matter the option you choose. If you spare this woman, who's already a very evil person, for some reason, she gets more malicious and becomes the killer. I think I got the better ending with the vengeful daughter, but it would have been cool if it was a completely different quest. Regardless, I always enjoy when the writers can flex their muscles a bit with more brutal storytelling. Another great example of this is the Brightthroat Village point of interest. We went here in the main story already, but it also has a completely unique questline attached to it. This one is more of a tragic tale, but I much preferred it over the Deadwater Village point of interest. It's a pretty long story, took me over an hour, but to summarize in a few words, an Argonian female is constantly being overlooked for the bonding ritual in this tribe. Basically, she's never selected to have children of her own, but she desperately wants to be a mother. Another Argonian tribe, the Ghost People, offer to help by nurturing any eggs she can smuggle out. Desperate to have children, this Argonian complies. However, we discover in this quest, the Ghost People performed barbaric experiments on these children, using poisons to turn them into mindless drones. The voice actor for Hexara, I think, did a really good job.
She convinced me to bring her these eggs, only to poison them. Look what she's done to my babies.
Anyway, you kill the leader of the Ghost People and discover a single Argonian child still alive despite being experimented on. When heading back to the Brightthroat Village, you have a decision. Expel Hexara for her crimes against the tribe along with the child, or let them stay and risk the corruption the child carries, destroying the tribe's history. Damn, I have a couple more written down here, but recording says I'm already at 20 minutes, so I think I'm going to move on to the next category. As someone who really enjoys reading Elder Scrolls books and in-game texts, I think ESO did an alright job with the environment of Black Marsh. I'd give it a 6 out of 10. It's described as an incredibly lush jungle swampland, untraversable due to the amount of vegetation and water. Ironically, the wallpapers released by ESO, I think, nail it. These are awesome interpretations of the lore and what the Black Marsh should look like. It just didn't translate over. Perhaps all that foliage was too ambitious for the game engine. That's the rumor why they cut out Fallen Esty from the game as well. But even very simple environmental features from the lore aren't really present. I would have loved to see some Hist piss. If you don't know what Hist piss is, it's described in the lore as a thick yellowish rain that's created from the evaporation of Hist sap. It's heavier than water, thus it rains much more often in Black Marsh with this sticky yellow liquid. It also apparently stinks as well, which is why it has the name piss. I'm not a game dev, I don't know how hard it would be to code, but Black Marsh has unique rain. It is one of the only places in Tamriel with it. It would have been cool to see. Instead, we just got standard English weather conditions. I don't know if it's just me, but I kept thinking the color was off. From what we know in the lore and what we can see from the concept art, Black Marsh is supposed to be vibrant. A swamp? Yes, but still vibrant. Emerald greens, dark browns, Hist sap glowing like hot lava. I did not see much of that in this DLC. Of course, there were some areas that had fantastic color to them, but most of the zone is more gray than green. ESO has some beautiful, vibrant areas to their game, so I know they can do it, I just don't know why it wasn't done here. Maybe it's the constant overcast weather, I don't know, but I felt like the contrast in this zone was dialed down. However, all of these complaints essentially vanish once you explore any underground instance. The subterranean design in this zone is phenomenal. Lost temples, ancient creatures, secret artifacts. The design of this environment makes you feel like Indiana Jones. I loved every second of it. So, should you play it? I think ESO's Murkmire had one of the best quests I've ever done in any Elder Scrolls game. Again, this is coming from a slimy Argonian main. I am incredibly biased, but fortunately you don't have to take my word for it. If you go online, you will find time and time again people praising this DLC for its fantastic campaign. And after 100%ing the entire zone, that's something I can absolutely confirm. As far as actual content is concerned, this zone has about 20 hours of stuff to do. 2 of the 4 mandatory achievements I do in the 100% challenge were actually pretty good. One was to gather all the 12 pieces of an ancient Argonian calendar used to control the weather. This achievement has its own questline and some really cool insight on Sithis, which I always love to learn about. The other achievement wasn't as good as that one, but it was still pretty fun. With a special stone, you zipline around between plants collecting notes about Black Marsh's exotic wildlife. But besides that, Murkmire is a little lacking compared to other zones. 2 delves, 2 world bosses with no form of dolmens or other overworld events. Murkmire unfortunately doesn't give players much reason to stick around. The Black Rose Arena is probably what people return here for the most, but Orsinium had an arena too, and still managed to have way more side content and way better rewards. I've already spoken about the rewards and the loot boxes, because that shit kinda pissed me off. Oh great, another loot crate. The only justifiable reason I can think to have these here is they provide a small factor of replayability. From an MMO perspective, if you get the same rewards from questing, it could dissuade players from doing it again. Loot boxes do give you a hypothetical RNG chance of getting a new set piece you didn't have before. The downside, of course, is for someone like me, who got the same fucking helmet 3 times and the same shoes 4 times. Murkmire's main story pulls this DLC from being mid to above average in my opinion. I wouldn't rate it the best DLC content I've ever done in this game, but I do think it's the best quest I've ever done in ESO and one of the best I've ever played in any Elder Scrolls game. Now, I luckily have a fantastic supporter, Sergeant Jeff Mongoose, who's gifted me every playable area in this game. I didn't have to buy this. If you have ESO Plus and never tried it, please do yourself a favor and play it. But if you're thinking about buying it outright for 2,000 crowns, I don't know. That's over 20 bucks, and even as an Argonian main, I don't know if that's worth it just for the 7-hour main campaign. You could buy Skyrim's Special Edition for that price. But speaking about getting something worth your money, why not check out this week's sponsor, Spirit & Coffee. If you're looking for handcrafted premium blends that help reduce crashes and jitters, Spirit & Coffee is the perfect choice. They sent me a few bags of their favorites, and not only does it taste amazing, but it's also infused with cognitive boosters and energy supplements. Their packaging is also completely unique, inspired by games and comics. Each character found on the coffee bags has a backstory, which you can learn about on their site. So if you're a gamer who loves coffee but isn't a fan of traditional gamer drinks, Spirit & Coffee might just be what you're looking for. Check it out and use Frost10 for 10% off. Link in the description. Of course, I would be amiss without wrapping this video up and saying a thank you to my members. You guys help make these videos a reality. And if you stuck around all the way to this point, you're supporting me in the best way possible. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I spent about 40 hours making it, but I had a really good time returning to ESO, something I thought perhaps wasn't in the cards for me. Please let me know if there's other stories in DLC like Murkmire and ESO. I'd kind of given up on it a little bit, but this was really good. But I'll see you guys soon. Literally.